joining us for another Digital Democracy on Tap. I'm Sarah Jane Crespo. In the wake of COVID-19's impact, many of our 2020 plans have changed, but one thing that hasn't is our partnership with the national program 1A. KMUW was proud to be named one of only 6 stations in the country chosen for 1A's Across America project, and 2020 is the continuation of that program. As part of this partnership, we've been fortunate to collaborate with producers from the show. We put together a wonderful evening at the Crown Uptown with Joshua Johnson last October, and tonight is yet another installment. 1A is produced by WAMU and distributed by NPR to over 375 stations nationwide. Sasha-Ann Simons is 1A's national correspondent and fill-in host. You've heard a lot of Sasha on 1A lately, and tonight we are so excited to have her as our moderator. Sasha is a regional Edward R. Murrow Award winner, and she's covered business and development and issues of race, identity, and economic mobility for NPR and PBS stations, as well as the PBS NewsHour. She came to WAMU in Washington, D.C. by way of Jamaica and Canada, so she brings a lot of perspective to this conversation about our country's supply chains. Welcome, Sasha-Ann.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to be here. Hi, everyone. Very good to be with you all today. I'm broadcasting here this evening from my home in Maryland, and I'm really excited to be partnering with KMUW as part of our Across America project. Now, we visited Wichita last fall, as Sarah mentioned, and I was so looking forward to coming to see you guys in April before the pandemic changed all of those plans. But I'm so glad that with the help of technology, I can be here with you guys today. Now, we wanted to team up to talk about how Kansans are getting food during the pandemic and subsequent lockdown orders. I know here, I've seen many empty grocery store shelves. Earlier today, I was out shopping. The pasta aisle was pretty much bare. And so I've had to lean a lot more on ordering out lately, and it's just been tough. So we're going to check in with a few providers around Wichita, but we're also want to hear from you. Tell us, how are you feeding yourself? Have you been cooking more at home, or have you been getting takeout? And if you're watching on Facebook, just add a comment. And if you're watching elsewhere, email us at info@kmuw.org. That's info@kmuw.org. Now, with me to talk about this is Travis Russell. He's a chef and owner of Public at the Brickyard restaurant. Hi, Travis, welcome.
Hi, Sasha, how are you doing?
Good, thanks for joining us. Joining us from Latham, Kansas is Linda Long. She owns and operates Graze the Prairie Ranch. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Sasha. Thanks for having me.
And to help us put it all together is KMUW's own Brian Grimmett. He covers energy and agriculture for the station. Hi, Brian.
Having me.
Oh. Good to hear you. Now, a few of you have actually already reached out, and you've already told us what you think about restaurants reopening. Sarah wrote to us on Facebook, and she said, "Not happening. Deliver or car side, but no way in hell I'm going out for a while." Also, Dan wrote to us and said, "I have no intention of walking into a restaurant or crowded store anytime this year. I really think businesses push too hard to open this early." So Brian, give us the lay of the land here in Kansas right now. What's allowed, what isn't when it comes to restaurants and takeout and just feeding yourself?
So right now we're in, the governor has kind of laid out this 4-phase plan on how we can reopen the economy. And right now we're in what the state considers phase 1. And that's still pretty limiting. Gatherings can only be to most 10 people, and that includes in restaurants. So a restaurant could be open, but they'd have to be able to limit any group to 10, and social distancing, so 6 feet apart would have to be. And so anecdotally, I mean, obviously I haven't been out around a whole lot, but anecdotally I've seen that even the restaurants that have been doing a lot of the curbside and the to-go orders, they haven't opened up their inside dining rooms yet. There are a few that I've seen some signs that say inside dining open, but I haven't really seen, at least in my short experience, the majority of them doing that, because it's still really difficult to kind of meet the strict guidelines that are out there right now.
Yeah, for sure. Travis, big question for you, but can you just walk us through what the last few months have been like for you? What does it look like for you in the restaurant?
Yeah, I think sometime around March 15th, if you weren't paying attention to what was going on in the world news, then it was quite a shock. We kind of felt internally that, this was going to be a big problem. And then once, we went into shutdown mode that Saturday, actually, we ran service. It was pretty slow. And then into Sunday morning, once Sunday morning brunch service was done, we had a meeting with some local business owners and got together and tried to put together a plan and get information and share information on what the future was going to look like and get as many answers as possible. So fast forward, that following Monday, we were closed. We formulated a plan, myself, my business partner, my wife. This is a family business, and my parents are involved as well. Okay. We all sort of sat down and had a meeting, and we decided that, we were going to close our doors until further notice, and essentially furloughed our entire staff.
So you're a takeout only now?
We are takeout only.
Mm-hmm.
So takeout has been functioning until really this last week for Mother's Day service by myself. So I come in and cook all week. I pretty much am quarantined either home or here. It's myself and my sister-in-law and I pretty much putting it together and then doing curbside service. We brought one server in sort of once a week for the last month, who's been sort of in solidarity quarantined as well. And she comes in and does curbside for us as well. And then that's been the extent of our business, which is very minimal to say the least.
I'm thinking of, other businesses who decided to just close. Why was it worth it for you to stay open?
Well, I think, we didn't immediately run to curbside. For like 2 or 3 weeks, we sort of, sat around and thought, what are we going to do? What's the plan? Trying to pay attention. Quite frankly, like the rest of the population, probably very scared of what was going on. I have a young child, and aging family members. So pretty sensitive to, how dangerous this is and how little we know, what the impacts are going to be. Fast forward about 3 weeks into that, we started to see other business models around the country, and even in the city, have a little bit of a lifeline with that. And we felt, prior to any sort of revenue coming in at all, that we needed to get rent, utilities, some sort of lifeline going. We had a tremendous amount of product in-house that we needed to move, which is a major part of the industry at large for a restaurant, even outside of a quarantine of a pandemic. A perishable, a certain amount of time to sell perishable items. And so that became a model where we felt we could distance. We have a unique space where we have 2 gates across a courtyard to where we could bring our food out, set it in the courtyard, come back into the facility, answer the phone call or the text, and then say your food's out on the blue bench. We felt that's
a lot.
Yeah, an industrious model. This is sort of a way that we could maybe do something to keep revenue coming in the door.
Linda, tell us a bit about your ranch. For those of us who don't know what a modern day ranch operation looks like, describe that for us.
So we're in Latham, we're about 50 miles east of Wichita. We raise grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, and we have a few meat chickens right now. For us, being about 50 miles from town, we direct market everything we raise ourselves. We sell to restaurants like Public and a few other restaurants in Wichita. Everything else we sell at farmers market, direct to customers. And when all this happened, the farmers markets shut down. They closed for a while. And for us to continue to move product, we had to change our model to more deliveries, and we started doing forced drop-offs.
Yeah. So tell us more about how that's all changed since the pandemic.
Well, our demand for our beef especially has increased tremendously. The problem we're having now is that we don't have enough processing dates to keep up with the demand. And processor nationwide the bigger processors are shutting down, and there's I think there's 750,000 animals on a backlog right now. That number's increasing by I think 160,000 per week. So there's most likely going to be a meat shortage, and smaller producers like us, we can't get into the processor and schedule more dates. But fortunately for us, we had scheduled in advance for the rest of the year, but we had no idea that we needed to schedule triple the amount that we have.
Hmm. Travis, how have you seen your other suppliers adapt to the changes in supply and demand?
Well, I'll kind of echo what Linda said. I guess I can speak to two levels of the supply chain. Local vendors and regional vendors such as Linda, even produce farmers, other mid-level meat producers, have been able to, I think, honestly, in conversations with them, they've found a direct-to-consumer lifeline, or they've found, again, being industrious, found ways to kind of move into a new revenue source. And honestly, because they consistently have to do that even in the good times, not as extreme, but they're, ingenuitive. They don't have major support from, big corporate pockets.
Yeah.
So they're often in a position of having to pivot, go to the marketplace itself. And so I think you see just an acceleration of that. From a commodity standpoint, especially meat, and what I mean by that is, a big box truck, someone that's providing meat that's coming from a Tyson plant or a major plant across the United States, some of them that you've seen in the news recently, like Smithfield, et cetera, they're doing a tremendous amount of production. And that's sort of, just like this, I just kind of liken it to like a motorcycle running down the highway real fast, and you throw a wrench into the gear, it just sort of trips the mechanism up. Like Linda said, they're backlogged. I mean, their production is so tremendous. For us, we've been able to sort of, since we're not doing as much sales, we have a network of local vendors that we rely on. I talked with Yoder. Yoder Meats is in Yoder, Kansas, which is sort of a mid-level producer around town. They've experienced similar things. They're having a tremendous demand for their product. And quite frankly, restaurants aren't able to move as much of it right now. And, I'm very grateful that a lot of the smaller vendors that I work with have an avenue or a creative way to get that to market, whether that be delivery, which is smart, virtual grocers, several, I think local vendors and local farmers have gotten together and used their web pages as sort of coalitions to liquidate products from several farms, in kind of a virtual community almost. And there's a local music venue in town that's almost becoming a virtual grocer, using their refrigeration space to, kind of host a virtual marketplace where people can come drop their produce from the farm and then, be sent out. This in Linda, a place where Linda, I think, sells Wave, that's in the downtown area too.
Cool.
So, there's a variety of different ways it's impacted. Commodity has really seen a hit. I guess to sum it up is I've seen prices increase.
Yeah.
Beef today, grind is up at least over $1 a pound.
Mm-hmm.
Even same with briskets or whole muscle cuts. And then if you look into like pork production, it's difficult if you're going through a box truck, depending on what their inventory already was frozen, to eat that product. So a lot of those companies had the resources to just freeze their product, and they moved a lot of their fresh to frozen, as opposed to like Yoder, who I'm dealing with now. They don't have inventory because of the demand and their locale. And so they're, once a week they do slaughter, and then they're moving that product fresh. So
Gotcha.
we're kind of waiting for when they get their product too.
Linzik wrote to us on Instagram. He said that they would not be visiting restaurants even if they do open. Linzik wrote, support local from home. This isn't over yet, not even by a mile. So Linda, I'm wondering, what do you think about this movement to support local businesses? Are you feeling the benefits of that?
Oh, absolutely. And, that's something good that's come out of COVID-19, right? As people are really, really searching for local producers, not just beef, but produce, honey, everything. So if you want to see, the positive side of this, that's definitely something I see as very positive. And I hope that that's something that will continue when we come out on the other end of this. And I feel like it has also brought so many producers together. I had a phone call from a producer this afternoon that's out of product, but called me up and say, hey, I had a customer looking for this. Do you have it? Can I send them to you? So it's building relationships amongst producers as well, which is great.
Travis, same question for you. Are you feeling the benefits of this support local? movement?
I think, our community has been really great to us in our existence of 7 years. So, I would say we are not doing very much revenue at all curbside. The little revenue we are doing is repeat customers. They're names that I recognize that call in, that order online for us. We've moved to a couple of models, an online model through our website. We also use the pre-existing delivery services, which, charge a premium. I think that's been kind of widely broadcasted that, that's at a cost to us for doing business. But I certainly, feel the love in the community. I think that, Wichita is a great place to run a business, and we've enjoyed that. And furthermore, business owners that are doing similar things, we've not been hesitant to pick up the phone and talk to one another and say, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Hey, do you have any to-go containers? A local coffee shop down the street, Reverie, has been really kind in sharing, packaged product with us so we can get some to-go stuff.
Yeah.
That's another aspect of this that, might not be seen, is that not just the commodity or the product from the farm or the big box, also the packaging is not in the surplus. So, there's a real demand for packaging right now, and a shortage in some places.
Yeah. Just want to remind folks, we are talking to Travis Russell. He is the owner at the Public at the Brickyard. And we're talking with Linda Long. She's an owner and operator of Graze, the Prairie Ranch. Also with us is Brian Grimmett, KMUW's energy and agriculture reporter. Linda, we've heard about how COVID-19 hotspots in meat packing plants are making it hard for ranchers to get their meat processed. Have problems at meat packing plants affected your business?
So far, no.
Okay.
Because like I said, I had already scheduled processing for the whole year, which is something I've been doing for several years. I sit down in December or January and I go by previous year's sales. What has changed is that in the past, I've had the flexibility to make some changes, add an animal, or schedule, move it a week, one way or the other as needed. I don't have that flexibility right now, and I know that so many small producers, other local producers who did not do this when I did, are struggling to get into the processor right now. So
Yeah.
it is definitely affecting small producers. There's no question about it.
Brian, I want to bring you into the conversation. The workers at meatpacking plants often work in very close quarters, and social distancing is nearly impossible. So tell us, are plants elsewhere in Kansas seeing outbreaks right now?
Yeah, so pretty much we have a cluster of major, big, large meatpacking processing plants in southwestern Kansas, and then there's another one kind of in central Kansas. And at all of those sites, they have seen a considerable outbreak. The state went out there and tried to test as many of those workers as they could. They found a lot of people didn't have it, but they also found quite a few of them were positive but asymptomatic. And so when you look at kind of statewide picture, and in the last couple of weeks, we saw these huge increases in the number of positive cases. It was like 75% of those positive cases
Wow.
were coming from the meatpacking, from those areas where there were those meatpacking plants.
Yeah. Now I want to bring someone else into this conversation for a few minutes now, who has a lot to say about Kansans who have joined the more than 33 million Americans that are now unemployed because of this pandemic. Brian Walker is the president of the Kansas Food Bank. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. Also, we want to hear from you, a reminder, tell us, how are you thinking about how you get your food? Are you ordering takeout to help boost the local economy, or maybe working a little harder to buy local? And if you're watching on Facebook, just add a comment. If you're not watching on Facebook, you're watching elsewhere, just email us at info@kmuw.org. That's info@kmuw.org. Brian Walker, with an unprecedented number of people that are now out of work, are you seeing an increase in the need right now?
Yeah, we're just as of this afternoon, our latest numbers show us that most of our agencies overall are talking about a 35% increase in need. So which is that is a huge number for us. Here at the Food Bank, we serve 85 counties of the state of Kansas. So Western Kansas and the Wichita area, everything except the northeast corner. There's 3 food banks that serve the state. and we have the biggest service territory, and we're all seeing those kind of increases. Of course, we're seeing a lot more people in the more urban areas than we are in the rural areas, but the rural areas are starting to inch up themselves.
Can you meet the demand?
You know, at this point we can. You know, we've been very blessed with a number of people that are supporting us. We're not having to turn, you know, folks away. We may not be giving them as much food as we would have in the past through our partners, or they may be getting, you know, carrots instead of canned corn. But we do see that supply chain starting to level itself out. I mean, just because all of a sudden there's not more people to eat, they just changed how they're eating. Of course, you know, we've learned from our other folks tonight that they're not going to restaurants and stuff. So it's taken the supply chain quite a while to catch up with, you know, how they process their goods when they're, you know, when they process goods to make goods for food service, that they can't just turn on a dime and make food for retail and food banks. So, you know, food's out longer. Our inventory is pretty low. We get worried at times, but, you know, working with the state and USDA, we've been doing really well.
Mm-hmm. Travis, how are you thinking about or seeing increased need in your community right now?
Well, I mean, you know, I can say, I think that just from talking with friends and then reading social media and whatnot, there's definitely, from a consumer standpoint, I think an apprehension to want to return to restaurants, to, you know, frequenting markets. I don't know if Linda's had a similar experience at farmers markets. So I definitely see there's a decreased appetite there, understandably so. I have driven around last weekend on my way home and noticed several businesses did have patronage, you know, both in and outside their dining hall. You know, so I think certainly people are very apprehensive on wanting to come back. There's a lot of need in the community, I'm sure, for food on all levels. Families that have, you know, different needs, you know, are going to feel it at different levels, the effects of this pandemic, for sure. Same
question for you, Linda. How are you thinking about or seeing the increased need in your community over in Latham?
Well, Latham, we don't have any grocery stores or anything like that. So I see the business at the farmer's market when I attend the farmer's market in Wichita. And we have done that for the last couple of 3 weeks. The attendance have been good. And I've seen a lot more people using their double up food bucks, which is a EBT where they get a matching amount to use for fruits and vegetables. I've seen a lot of people buying meat and vegetables. And the difference in the farmers market this year is that people are coming in, they're wearing masks, they're wearing gloves, they're getting their groceries, and they're leaving. The social aspect of the farmers market is pretty much gone, and it's a totally different feel. I mean, but it is outdoors, and I think people may feel a little bit better about shopping outdoors than in a grocery store. But it's definitely been different.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I think about moments when I'm in the grocery store, and I feel like we don't even want to make eye contact with people anymore. It's kind of just like you just want to push your cart and just keep going.
But people really have, like, when there's a line, they have distance, 6 feet back, and people are keeping a good distance and being very courteous. I have to say that.
Brian Walker, how has the pandemic forced your food bank to change how it operates or where it gets its food?
Yeah, so for April and March donated food that comes to us, it was down about 40 or 45% on average. And so we have really had to turn to purchasing a lot more food. For April alone, we purchased, about $500,000 more than we would normally purchase in food. And so that's what we're having to do. So we're having to go out on the market, purchase food to meet the increased demand at the agencies and to make up for the food that's not being donated to us. What happened is we do a lot of retail pickups and those kind of things. And, when everybody was sitting in the grocery store, those retail.
Oh, we'll have to work on getting Brian back to the conversation. But I wanted to read a message on Facebook from Leanne Mulford. She said, "We've been having groceries and dine out food delivered." So it's kind of the same story all around, is just, trying to support local, trying to source local. I know, Travis, I wanted to ask you about another side of your business, which is the people. Did you have to lay off employees? I think you were talking about that a bit earlier. Just
Yeah.
tell us how you came to your decision making.
Sure. We realized that we carry a sizable staff, so we realized early on it was going to be a matter of we could probably keep on a couple of people maybe if we were going to be able to do business, dramatically reduce their hours. Like I said, we had been to a meeting with other business owners that Sunday night in the middle of March, and had kind of gotten wind that there was going to be support to put through what eventually became the PPP program and unemployment. That the sort of employees that have been just sort of cut out of their job overnight, the government was going to step in to offer some assistance.
Mm-hmm.
We felt at that point it was crucial to get them ahead of the game and get them in a position to where they were furloughed so they could then move forward and apply for unemployment and start to secure finances to take care of themselves and have at least some sort of resource, to keep their households together.
So an update, Brian Walker did comment on Facebook that he just lost power. So we're not going to be able to get him back, unfortunately, for this hour, but let's continue the discussion. Travis, KMUW did poll Facebook fans asking whether people are even ready for restaurants to reopen. 87% said no. Does it matter if restaurants reopen if there are no customers filling the booths?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's, the outlook is grim.
I don't know when I'm going to go back to a restaurant. If I'm going to be quite honest with you,
absolutely
to sit down and dine in, I don't know. I can't see it.
Right. And that's the whole point of it is you get to go sort of have an experience where you can kind of separate yourself from making the food. Otherwise you'd stay at home, and you get to have that experience where you kind of get a cut free from the day and kind of relax. And certainly this environment's the antithesis of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think I share a lot of those sentiments that the community has for sure. I think our attitude is that, we're paying close attention to what the governor is saying. We're also trying to be sensitive to the community and then make decisions based on what's appropriate. We have to put a decent portion of our staffing back together. So we're kind of slowly walking back to that level of production. We're offering outside seating going into the weekends. We have an advantage that we have a large patio space that other businesses don't. There's quite a few restaurants in the city that are interior only. They might be, under 1,000 square foot. I really am not sure how those businesses are going to operate,
Linda, what do you think of reopening? How is it going to affect your life and your business?
Well, for me right now, when the restaurants reopen, I feel like it's going to affect our business as far as people are not going to cook it at home as much, maybe when they do feel comfortable going out. But I'm okay with that. I mean, we all need to stay in business, right? I mean, this whole thing it's kind of crazy how people are hoarding groceries. We can't keep up with the demand on beef right now. And if we sell a little less beef and Travis fills his dining room, I think that's fantastic, honestly. Just some normalcy would be great. I don't know what the new normal is, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah, we're all waiting to see what that's going to look like.
Right.
Brian, who's still with us, tell us what else we should know about restaurants, that are reopening and what that looks like.
Yeah, well, Travis brought up an interesting question that I think a lot of restaurants have. Not everyone has a big open space. A lot of, especially smaller local restaurants, do maybe have kind of those small dining rooms where that social distancing is really hard. And it's interesting in the state guidelines that are put out, they say in places where you can't social distance, as long as you can separate groups by physical barriers, whatever that looks like, maybe plexiglass or something, that might be an option. And so, especially for some of these places with really smaller dining halls, you could look into that. But again, it always comes back to, even if you can do that, which they could do that right now in the state, are people willing to go in and experience that yet? And maybe we'll get there. But right now, still with those 10-person limits, maybe when we get into phase 2, which might come in the next week or two, it increases those public limits to 30. Maybe people will start feeling better. But I guess it really depends on how does the virus and the transmission of that react as more and more people go out.
So given all the limitations that we've just talked about, Linda, tell us, what are you excited about going forward?
Well, what am I excited about? For us though, I honestly feel like my day-to-day life hasn't really changed that much because I am out in the open and I'm isolated a lot um, in our business, taking care of animals. But I'm excited for my friends and customers and everyone else I know to feel safe again, to feel
Yeah.
comfortable. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what I'm looking forward to.
Well, Linda, I know that you have to go, so I do want to thank you so much for joining us today. Linda Long is owner and operator of Graze the Prairie Ranch. Thanks for being with us, Linda.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Travis, wrote to us on Facebook. Here's another Facebook message. Lee says, are these theoretical restaurants reopening with closed dining rooms, hazard pay, and protective equipment provided for their employees? How are you thinking about reopening right now, Travis?
Well, as Brian sort of touched that, we have a large outdoor patio space, close to 3,000 square foot.
Okay.
So what we decided to do is, establish a seating plan in the courtyard and have limited hours. Typically prior to COVID, we were a all-day sort of service restaurant. We're open for lunch all the way through dinner service and even into bar hours. So our attitude on it is we're going to walk forward with that in place, and yes, provide PPE for our employees. Sort of moving forward with a modified service technique. We're employing online ordering and then some form of ordering that will be similar to what you might experience at a sushi restaurant, where you would sit down and mark onto a piece of paper what you'd like.
Yeah.
We feel like that's a mechanism that can help social distance. And be open for several days this weekend as we put some of our employees back to work that really desperately need to work. Beyond that, we're going to sort of follow the guidelines of the state and see what happens if we move into phase 2. Reevaluate there. We don't anticipate opening our dining hall until we feel comfortable and decide what is best case scenario for everyone involved, not just patrons but even our staff. I think there's some training that is really important that needs to happen this weekend. Some scheduling that we've worked on, trying to figure out how to get different rotations of staffs in.
Yeah.
Not everyone's here at the same time, and put together really some sort of systemic plan that would work for operating a business that really.
A lot of changes.
Yeah,
have to put in a lot of changes. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Brian, Chris wrote to us on Facebook, what are we doing to increase access to SNAP benefits during this time of widespread unemployment? Do you know anything about that?
Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about SNAP benefits and increasing that. I imagine any of that kind of decision would have to come from first the federal government and then deciding whether or not the states want to do it. But earlier, she brought up at the farmers market those double dollars, and I had talked to one of the operators of that farmers market in Wichita, at least, saying that they had really seen kind of an increase in that, and that it really was kind of a great opportunity for people who are new to kind of that realm. They've lost their jobs, they're now getting some of those SNAP benefits to kind of make their money go a little further, especially with being able to purchase fresh food and some of those vegetables and produce.
Yeah. I want to look forward now, Travis. What are some of the positives that you are seeing through all of this?
Well, I think resourcefulness just of a network of people that work really hard at a job that's really difficult, an industry that's really tough, and people that are really good people. So I think that's really exciting. In regards to Linda and a lot of the farmers that I've seen, their sort of community spirit and their ability to coalesce together has been really a bright spot. And supporting one another. People, the last thing people probably can afford at times is to come buy takeout, but it does mean a lot to us as a business that, someone would be willing to do that. And so those have all been really great things. Looking forward, I'm really just hopeful that I can safely see my staff again, who I really miss and care about quite a bit.
That'll be a nice little reunion for sure. Brian, what are you watching for next in this space?
I really think it is can we get kind of that production chain, can that continue to stay afloat? As Travis said a little earlier, these things are moving so quickly. The amount of meat that's going through these larger meat packing processes is so large. There's this whole ring. I mean, you hatch a chicken knowing that in so many days it needs to go to slaughter, and same thing with cattle. And when you throw one little tiny change into it, it's really hard to adapt to that. And so as we move forward, especially here in Kansas was, even though we had those spike in cases at the meatpacking plants, none of those plants closed. They all stayed open. They're still currently open. And so there might have been slight, obviously, reductions in what they were able to do, but they kept going forward. And how much longer can they keep that up? And maybe they can continue to keep that up, even with those cases they've had. But that's kind of what I'm looking to see is does that supply chain, can it adapt quick enough? Because there really was kind of a wrench thrown into the works the last month.
That is KMUW's agriculture reporter, Brian Grimmett. Brian, always a pleasure. Also, we have with us Travis Russell, chef and owner of Public at the Brickyard restaurant. Earlier, you also heard from Brian Walker, the president of the Kansas Food Bank. Thanks all for being with us today. This socially distanced edition of KMUW's Democracy on Tap was produced by KMUW's Sarah Jane Crespo and Haley Krausen, and by 1A's Amanda Williams. And a big thanks to KMUW for partnering with us on this conversation as part of our 1A Across America project. You can catch the next Digital Democracy on Tap about staying healthy amidst COVID-19. That'll be on May 26th at 5 p.m. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe out there.